Beautiful Lou, Maba no Sabe, listening to the Cabbages podcast. Already, bro.
Gary.
Yes, Jeff.
Gary.
What's going on?
I have terrible news.
What do you mean? What's happening?
Gary, the community center is in trouble. The community center is in trouble, bro. I don't know how to tell you this, but the only way to do this, we got to dance our way out. We got to dance our way out. Let's just bring Beautiful Lou in.
We gotta just bring Beautiful
I
Lou.
I can't do it. We got to
No.
bring in Beautiful Lou.
Oh, God.
The community
Guys,
center is in trouble. It's in trouble.
We watched Honey. Community
Starring
Center's in
Jessica
trouble.
Alba, and yeah,
Little Romeo.
there. It takes them a little while to realize it, but the community center, I don't know about the future of that place. It doesn't look good.
Let's bring our guest in. We gotta do. I can't wait any longer. Let's just gotta do this. All right, we've got quite the guest for today's show. Joining us now is Beautiful Lou. This Texas artist has produced for so many MC favorites. I'm talking ASAP Rocky, Cameron, Heems, Lil B. But real heads know that he's a rapper in his own right, too. His latest project is a mixtape called Stay With Me, Every Day Could Be This Perfect, available on Bandcamp or wherever music is streamed or sold. Hello and welcome to the show.
Already, how's it going, bro?
It is an absolute pleasure to have you on here. You know I fuck with you. I know I enjoy what you do. And it's kind of exciting that we have came on together finally. And of all things to talk about, we have selected the movie Honey to be our touch point.
Already.
You're sort of the expert on this film. Certainly on this
I
call.
would say
But
so. I would say so, yeah. If this was a game show, yeah, this is the topic I'd pick, probably.
yeah. This was Jeopardy. You go right to the $1,000. Like you just like right there.
Oh, yeah, the category for sure, for sure.
How many times do you think you've seen this movie? How many times do you think you've seen this?
Probably about over 20, I would say. About
Oh
20,
yeah.
25. Yeah, I remember the summer it came out. I got about four or five of my friends all worked at the local movie theater, the AMC. So I saw a movie that came out for free, and for some reason, this movie was just the movie we always went to go see. Like I remember the first time, shout out my girl Neely, she got me in the movie for free, and ever since then, I was just entranced by it. Like it was just so bad, but so good. Like a time capsule of that summer of '03 or '04. I forget
So three,
which
yeah.
year it
Oh,
came
It's
three.
all
out, but
three.
'03, yeah, that summer of '03, it was just like a kind of a weird time capsule where everybody, even though I was in Texas and this movie was in the Bronx, like we still had that. It was still that's what you saw on TV of that what was going on right now. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The kind of the fake Neptune's beats and
Oh yeah. The Rodney
everybody,
Jerkins.
yeah, that's weird. I want to get into that a little bit
Yeah.
later, but yeah, Ronnie Jerkins was he was doing his best Neptune impression in this movie for some reason. I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
obviously because it was the hot sound at the time,
Yeah, it
but
was hot. Yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah.
kind of weird. Yeah. But yeah, this is gonna be definitely one of my top 10 bad movies that I really, really like. So
Yeah. And we
yeah,
love bad movies on this show. That's kind of
Me
our
too.
bread and butter, if you will. And I just want to point
for
out, like,
sure.
your
Yeah.
appreciation for this film as someone from Texas. I should point out that this film was not filmed in New York. Let's just make
No.
it very
Oh, for
clear.
sure.
While there's some exteriors that are clearly New York City, the actual reality, they
Mhm.
filmed this film entirely in Toronto. This is a Canadian
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
production.
yeah.
That's a
So
popular move in these movies.
look, it's a budget move. As we've learned in a
Yeah.
lot of our conversations, Canadian cities, specifically Toronto, have stood in, Montreal as well, have stood in for New York
Oh yeah.
dozens, hundreds of
Trope
times.
movies. When you get a really tropey movie,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where you film it. No one's gonna care. It's the big city, and
Yeah.
the community center's in trouble.
Yeah. The funniest thing is
Yeah.
that when you watch these movies with Canadians, they start to be like, I know this is Vancouver. Like they will like point these things out. Like, nah, this was definitely not. I don't know where city this is supposed to be. It's not LA. This is Vancouver. This is not
Yeah.
New York. This is Toronto. So I could tell pretty much right from the start. I was like, this is definitely not here. But like they try to trick you really well. There's a lot of like exterior, like almost like drone level
Hmm.
views of the city. Silver Cup Studios here in Queens, for
Hmm.
example, like they make it seem like, oh, really? Like this is where it's happening. Like, no, no, no. They just got like some stock footage. I mean, I don't even think this is original shots of that. But
Uh,
you said you used the word time capsule before, and I think that's a really good way
mhm,
to start approaching this from looking at this film essentially 20, 21 years after it came out. Like it does speak to a
mhm,
particular time period. Romeo Miller was low Romeo.
Mhm.
That
mhm,
he just was, and this was a particular time for what his father was doing at that time. His father was making a lot of big moves, movies wise. Like that was part of the whole ethos of
Right.
things. So like were you at that time, were you paying attention much to kind of what was happening with like No Limit and kind of what was going on with that sound?
yeah, yeah, for sure. Huge No Limit fan back when it came out. Oh, around that late '90s period when they first
Mm-hmm.
started getting all big. But then around this time, I remember after I graduated high school '03, so I remember after that, no Limit was still kind of there. They had songs that were getting played, but I definitely could tell Master P was like moving away and trying to branch out more into the video, getting a little Romeo like on Nickelodeon and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was more than it was. I felt like he was doing the smart thing because it was time for him. His streak was kind of winding down, so it was time for him to branch out and do more things besides that. And he had the hustle to do it. I mean, he was everywhere, in Texas. You know what I'm saying? Like people love No Limit down there. So I imagine I don't know about New York, but
Yeah, well, there's certain songs that reach here, but I think to be honest, we had our kind of our arms folded a lot about this stuff. It
mm,
really, like, I think about kind
mm,
of the stuff that like you work with ASAP Rocky, and like some of those projects like the ones that you were part of were the kind of records that kind
mm,
of broke down our defenses a bit because they sort of broke some barriers. But there were certain songs that
mm,
were undeniable songs that happened, obviously from No Limit that just like I'm sorry, like Jeff's originally from the South, he's from
Mhm.
North Carolina,
mm.
so like he lives up
Oh,
here in
cool,
New
cool.
York now. But like, so there's always that perspective when we talk about the regional hip hop stuff. But the thing with Romeo, with Lil Romeo, was that like he already had like chart Billboard Hot 100 charting tracks. He had
Mm,
albums on the Billboard
mm,
200. By the time this movie came out, the first season of Lil Romeo was in production, and I think had a few episodes out already. So like
mm,
of the Romeo sitcom. So like it's sort of like you're right to kind of say that Masterpiece Focus was sort of building that brand for
Mhm.
his son and kind of making this sort of like giving him this sort of runway to his own success at this time
mm,
too. So it's of all the movies to kind of choose to be in, one that's like a family friendly film that is stacked with wild cameos for hip hop,
mm.
particularly hip hop and R&B. Jeff, you have experience with this movie prior to this because this was my first time. Was
Yeah,
was
no,
your
I'd
first
I'd
time?
seen it before. I went through a heavy dance trope movie run. I watched like 20 to 30 of these fucking things.
There are that many? Jesus.
Oh, dude, this guy's got whiskers on it, man. The community center's been in trouble for like 3 or 4 decades before
Okay.
before we even get to 2003.
Wow.
This is
Mm,
not the first community center closure that we've been facing.
Mm.
Uh, and I'll say this, like it doesn't rank up with the worst or the most ridiculous or the most dramatic. It's actually, for the most part kind of boring, which I love. You know
Okay.
what I mean? Like it's just telling you the story of what's going on right now.
Mhm.
Right now, we're getting threatened in the street by a gang member
But just once.
just once, and then the barber's like, "Hey, knock it off," and the guy's like, "We'll see about that," and then we never do. We never actually see about it at all, really.
You
It's
know
not
what's
seen.
wild? You know what's really wild is like I've had to readjust my thinking because
Yeah.
this now for us is the second family friendly film we've watched on the show in a row.
Hmm.
And like I'm realizing that like my expectations of watching gritty shit were like if a pretty young woman is approached by a drug dealer in the street, like
Hmm.
there's violence, there's genuine danger. And I'm like, I'm waiting for this film to take a hard turn. And it
Right.
doesn't
It does. It's
because
not going to. No, absolutely
this
not.
is an arcade game. That's what
Yeah.
essentially it's the arcade game version of this. It's like there's a steering wheel
Yeah.
on it as opposed to like, oh no, we're actually driving the car and we're heading
Yeah. Once
towards
those
like
defenses go
horror.
down, this movie's actually pretty charming.
Yeah.
I'm not
That
gonna lie to you.
absolutely
I
impacted
really
like
like it.
my second and third viewings. It's just like now I know, okay, the stakes in this film are relatively low.
Oh,
Nobody is in true danger throughout this film. Let's breathe easy. Now,
right.
you've seen this so many times, man. Like I have to kind of wonder how is your impression of the film evolved I know you watched a number of times back in 03, but how has your opinion of this
Mhm.
film sort of evolved and your relationship with this movie evolved over time?
I guess getting older and getting more into like learning how to make like short films and like directing music videos, like I've like, appreciated that, the director and the people that made it knew what they were supposed to make, but they were still trying to like stick little weird things in there. Like when you were talking about how the gangster approached Honey and was like threatening her a little bit, and then Mekhi Phifer comes and saves her. Like I always distinctly remember they had these weird, very, very close up shots. They were like the fate. I was like, I've
Yeah.
never seen that before, and I thought it was why did they choose to do that? Was it a technical limitation? Because it really feels like they shot that scene like kind of spur of the moment with like maybe HDR, like it's like a more low
Okay.
budget camera. So
Hmm.
maybe that's why they had to do that. But I don't know, like things like that. There was some speed ramping in there, which I don't know how familiar I always where they like do a fast put in like a fast motion and then slow it down a little bit. They did that kind of like when she first sees herself on TV and stuff.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, there was like little weird stylistic choices that I liked in that movie that I liked that I appreciate now more, which I didn't really know what was
Hmm.
going on back then. But and like I said, it was you could tell that they knew what they had to make, but they still they want to sneak in a few things in there, try some things or whatever. But yeah, I mean, even though it's a bad movie, it's still I never feel like I'm not entertained by it. It's pure charisma. Like Jessica Alba was like everybody at that time, everybody loved Jessica Alba. She was
Yeah.
like she had that charisma about her. She wasn't the greatest actress, of course, but she's just so beautiful. Like it was okay to stare at her for like an hour and a half. You know what I'm saying? Like that was fine with me. Mekhi Phifer, that dude, he elevates any movie he's in. Paid in full.
Great.
Oh yeah.
Dawn of the Dead. Like he's just I don't know. He's got that charm to him. Like, he's just cool, like the coolest dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? So even though the movie's bad, they got characters and the casting was on point, Even I like the choice of that, the music director, basically the villain of the movie.
Mm.
He's the little kid from Big. I don't know if y'all remember the movie Tom Hanks
Hmm.
movie.
We were
Hmm.
just talking about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Blu-ray
yeah,
Houseman, yeah.
yeah.
Young
He's
Josh from
big. And
Big.
yeah, he also had that small cameo in Lost in Translation, where he's the DJ and they're all talking in that
Mhm.
in that
No.
little table. And
Yeah.
I always felt like I was being attacked by yeah by Sophia Coppola. Whenever I see her, I'm gonna ask her like, you gotta
That's
beef
a
with
great
DJs and
conversation.
producers or what's going on here? Because I always felt attacked. Like, is that how I sound when I'm talking to other people about beats and they don't give a damn what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So anyway,
We
yeah, and
a lot of people got called out on that
Yeah.
I've always wanted to ask you like, who is that about? Because I know that's based on somebody. Like, what DJ like bored you to death at a party? But yeah, but his performance, like the way he would, how slimy he was, and then at the end when he chose to slip into some weird pimp accent, like, bitch, how you trying to play me and stuff? Like my friends love that part. Like, why is he talking like that? You know what
He
I'm saying?
code switched. He fully code. You're like, whoa, 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 big dog.
Yeah,
Like,
there's just so many things in this movie. There's
you're
just like
so unassuming until
interesting
right then.
choices.
That code switching moment is fascinating because it detracts. It's so jarring compared to how he'd been talking all this time, kind of using his proximity to people of color to sort of, you know, feel like he could have that moment with her. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, it's like you're looking at this and you're going, wait, man, wait, 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 wait. This entire movie, like Jessica Alba can't keep an accent. It is just
Yeah,
floating
yeah,
up in the
Yeah.
air. So every now and then it's like, I think you're trying to do J Lo. And the next time I'm just like, I don't know what that was.
Well,
But
sometimes
again,
when she talks to the kids, not the kids that she's already teaching, the ones she wants to teach,
yeah.
uh, she she like code switches with them, where she'll be like, all right, bust, bust. Like she just uses a different language with them than with everybody else. And she's like, all right, Natalia, like when you do this, and then you'll switch like this. And then she talks to them and she's like, okay, let me see what you got. It's
But
so
I
weird.
if I'm really gonna be honest, and this is where
Yeah.
we really get into the meat of this like
Yeah, yeah.
bad movie stuff, is like there's four different people who had their hand in writing this film at
Yeah.
different
There it
times.
is. Mm-hmm.
Scenes are getting written, they're getting punched up, they're getting cut
Classic
out,
cabbages
rewritten.
material.
So like I read an interview with the director, Bille Woodruff, from a few years back. Actually, no, this one I know came from right before this movie came out. But he basically talks about like the order in which like we had certain writer on this. It was like we had Alonzo Brown and Kim Watson are your credited writers. And they both had pretty
Yeah.
limited resumes, but Watson was a music video director in the 90s. It did like a lot of stuff with R. Kelly. And
Hmm.
then you get rewrites done uncredited, mind you, by two others. One is Kate Lanier, who has writing credits on Set It Off and the Mariah Carey movie Glitter, and then which I feel there are parallels. And then you have Susanna Grant, who's best known for her work on Aaron Brockovich. So I just want you to imagine it's just like music video director plus the Aaron Brockovich writer plus someone who wrote Set It Off in Glitter. I think that's how you get those scenes. You get those scenes. You're like, wait, she talks to
I wonder
Raymond.
what order they did this in. So they had their like beginner writers,
Yeah.
and then they moved to a very good writer, it would seem, and then someone who's done this schlock before.
Yes.
That's the way I imagine it. So like,
It's
okay, you know what? I'm so tired of talking about writers. Why don't you just bring someone who's written this movie before?
essentially,
Mm.
Great.
you
Oh,
know,
the community center's in trouble? Great. That's like 20 minutes we can mark off right there.
and it's like when you get
I
to
like
that point, when you get to that point in the film, it's like there's only so much you could really do to rewrite
Yeah,
it. You're just punching it
real
up at that
talk.
point.
I like to believe that it was Jessica Alba's stylistic choice on set that she decided
Mm.
to go so many different ways. You know what I'm saying?
I love
She just
it.
wanted to show off her acting range. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
she saw this as her vehicle and like her starring thing, and she wanted to like, yo, I can do this. And I can win an MTV Movie Award for this or something. You know? So,
But I think the way you talk
uh,
about it, like the way you talked about it, like it's like she is very attractive. And I feel like there's sort
Mhm.
of a like she can get away with doing that in such a way. Like I think about some of the movies that I saw in the 90s. One of my favorite things is when all the American actors try to do British accents.
mhm.
Bram Stoker's Dracula is maybe the best example of that. Winona
Mm,
Ryder and Keanu Reeves doing maybe some of the
mm.
worst. I mean, Jessica Alba in this movie, by comparison, is Shakespearean compared to those two in fucking Bram Stoker's Dracula. So, like, I don't want to shit
Fair.
on her thing too much. It's just like there's versions, there's levels to this, and it's just like it was just kind of awkward, but she pulls it off well enough, and it doesn't hurt that she's attractive. It doesn't hurt that she's able to kind of move within these scenes credibly versus people who just get like they make a lot of actors make a choice, say I'm going to do
You know,
this.
the folks in this film were in
Mm.
shape. Everybody was in shape. You know what I mean? Like
Everybody
they were just ready to dance at any given moment. It's all they wanted to do. They just wanted to dance.
except for
Did you count
the rappers
how
didn't want
many body
dances.
rolls? How many body
I
rolls
lost
she was
track.
doing? She had that.
I lost
That's,
track.
So
that's
many.
another thing we like to keep track of. How many body rolls she's gonna hit off on each music video, each set.
But let me ask you with that like her they're trying to portray her in this way as she's some sort of savant. Like
Hmm.
she
Mm-hmm.
sees dance different than other people. Like but then you're pointing out you're like actually she's relying on this bit too much. And then like Romeo calls her out. Little Romeo calls her out, and he's just like, "That's my move. Do I get paid for
Mm-hmm.
that? Is it like
Mm-hmm.
you're just jacking my shit." And so I love that we're supposed to believe. And again, I'm not a dance person, so I can't like speak too much to whether her dance is good or bad. But it's just like the scene that really gets me, and I'd love to get you guys' impression on it too, is when she's having trouble with the choreography at that outdoor space and then
Mhm,
she sees
mhm,
the
mhm.
basketball and the jump rope double dutch, and that becomes this like revelation of dance, essentially for her. But like,
Yeah,
does that feel
that human movement can inspire you to move. Pretty
as a
sick.
human
Yeah,
like,
sure.
and that somehow works? Like, what do you think about that scene specifically, which is such an odd scene for me in this whole
Pure magic, man. Just magic.
film?
Yeah, like he was saying, bro. Like, yeah, I guess that was the point of the movie where you're supposed to be like, I guess the viewer is supposed to realize, like, oh man, like inspiration can come from anywhere. Like this whole thing is
Anywhere.
just, it's art, bro. It's art or whatever. But yeah, that seems pretty bad. But I did like growing up, or when I saw this movie when I was a kid, I did like seeing the behind the scenes stuff. Like I'm the kind of kid I liked watching all that making the video on MTV, all that kind of stuff where you
Mhm.
saw the set
Sure.
and you saw stuff being made. So even though how corny that montage or that part of the movie was where she's going from
Mhm.
video set to video set, I love
Yeah.
that to see it,
Dude,
just to see the behind the
you
scenes and
could tell
you
a bunch
realize the
of people had
director,
directed a music video before, for sure, that were working
Uh-huh.
on this because it
yeah, yeah.
was very realistic in a movie that sort of, takes liberties with realism. And like we're, you
Mm.
just sort of have to go along for the ride with some of these scenes, like the one we were describing.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's fine so long as like it's interesting. And one of the most interesting parts is like how lifelike the music video stuff was.
When you think about this particular time in filmmaking, a lot of people who were music video directors were getting their shot at making feature
Yeah.
films. And that's what I think is this is part of this canon of films that's in there. There's some got to be like these auteurs. You get like Hype Williams's Belly. You get Michel Gondry's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Mm.
Like they take the skills they developed on these sets and there's ideas, and they push it into these
And
beautiful
sometimes it's
movies.
just a case of like, can you make a good version of this thing that we've sold a million times?
Yeah.
That's a starting point for a lot of people is like, you got to come in here and you got to make this into a diamond.
Yeah.
And
Well,
we're
that,
giving you a young star and we're going to try and figure it out.
Well, because there were fewer of these directors who were given a chance to be auteurs. They were
Right.
sort of just like been like, we have a project for you. Here you go. That's how you get Paul Hunter's Bulletproof Monk. That's how you get
Mm.
Antoine Fuqua's The Replacement Killers or
Mm-hmm.
Francis Lawrence's Constantine. They get projects, and some turn into big things like F. Gary Gray blockbusters. Fucking Jonathan
Didn't
Glazer.
David Fincher?
Yeah,
Didn't David
Fincher's a
Fincher
great
try that?
example.
Yeah.
Fincher, like you saw him do like Nine Inch Nails stuff and all like Fincher, like even before he was doing work with Trent Reznor on
He
soundtracks,
did an
like
Aerosmith jam too, right?
was he which ones were the Aerosmith ones he did? He not the one with Alicia
I
Silverstone.
think he just did one. No, it was
Okay.
earlier. I think it was
He was
maybe
doing like
Janie's Got a
Madonna, wasn't he?
Gun.
Like Vogue
Yeah,
and all that. I think I'm pretty
I
sure he
think
He
did
did
I think
Madonna.
you're right.
Yeah.
doesn't
And he
Fincher
did
do the
Janie's
the
Got a Gun,
bad
I think.
doesn't Fincher do the Bad Girl video? The one with Christopher Walken?
Oh, maybe he
I
does.
think
That
that's
sounds
I mean,
right.
I think it is. I'll have to look to confirm. So please don't fact check me, fucking people out there. But but nonetheless, like it's like these guys, they all got these opportunities because they were making this very stylistic stuff in these shorter clumps.
Right.
It's like, well, great, this is where the new system comes from. So like I think that part of what makes this, and I'm gonna say this out loud, a good bad movie,
Mhm.
a good bad movie, is
No
that
argument.
it was based on a world that these directors understood.
That and it was based on a true story.
Right. Good source
And
material.
the person it was based on, the real life Honey Daniels, is Katrina, I think her name is.
Yes, in the movie
That's her.
Katrina. Yeah.
Katrina is the person this story is actually about, and she plays the villain,
Yeah,
or kind of, I
Lori Ann
guess,
Gibson.
kind of a villain. She's in there as sort
A
of a villainous
foil, I
character.
guess.
Yeah,
I'd say a
the real
foil.
villain is the director.
Yeah.
Mm.
But Lori Ann Gibson,
Maybe
who I
I
first
guess
saw, yeah.
the evil rival. I guess I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
And I
rival. That's a good word for it.
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
moment that flashed for me was when I saw Lori Ann Gibson show up as this, and I'm like, wait, I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you from? And I'm like, I know you from making the band. I know you from
Yeah, for
being
sure.
the go-to choreographer for
Hmm.
Bad Boy stuff. You were over there with Danity Kane showing them how to dance. You're showing the band how to move in their music videos. Like, so to know that there was this backstory about her, it's just like, wow, her character really gets shit on a lot. The Missy Elliott scene, and my God, the Missy Elliott cameos in this are off the charts
So
good.
good. So
But
good.
she dresses her down in a way that just like, I don't know if I could handle that. Like, this is a movie about me and my life, but you're gonna take my character like this? Like that's harsh.
Yeah.
What is this, this? And what does she refer to? How does she refer to her? She says, you need to call MC Hammer and tell him you've been stealing his moves.
I was ready for the Missy Elliott takeover, man. Was she in any more movies? Like I don't really remember her being
It's
in anything really a lot.
crazy. I looked up
Yeah.
Yeah.
immediately afterwards. I was like, can I see, has she been in anything else? And the answer is no. For some
Damn.
reason, she should be like, like
It should have
you
popped.
think about Latifah. She should be that
Yeah, I
kind of
was
level. She
thinking
should be
that.
able to
Yeah.
pull off all those kinds of roles. A diverse, and obviously with Latifah, it's like the range is enormous. Like she
Yeah.
should be able to do those roles. I don't think she wanted to do it. I don't think she wanted to be that person, but
I was gonna
she,
say that sounds more like maybe she didn't want to than it does. It didn't work out, but I don't know. I don't know the backstory.
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind,
Even
like,
based off her videos. Yeah, even based
yeah,
off her videos, I would feel like she would want to do something like maybe an experimental short film or something.
It's
But yeah,
personality
you're right.
plus and all everything she does, her personality is shining through.
I mean, that's
for
part of her
sure.
charm. And like, and
Yeah.
it's the power of the music video, the power of the music video, not only just to get these people these things, but like, you know, it's interesting to see the kind of nuts and bolts of it, like that Jadakiss and Chic video that they were meant to see in there. And it's like, okay, all right. So we see like how these sort of things go and we get an understanding kind of what it's like behind the scenes. And again, there's a certain amount of just like hurry up and wait that goes on as
Hmm.
people figure things out on set. There's something about personality that shines through. Jadakiss and Chic aren't doing anything. They're just taking whatever direction you're because they're just there to do this promotional thing so they can move on to their next thing. But then
Yeah.
it's like you've got Tweet flying all around.
Which that was
So
a wild jump because it was like
the Tweet.
you're directing a staged thing, like on a stage. Now you're in an outdoor setting. Now we're gonna put this person. This person's flying.
Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're gonna start to slay. That's a
In
wild
like
leap. That's
how
hard to
many
direct.
how many weeks have transpired at this point of the film? Do you have any sense of timeline in this movie?
No, it feels like the videos come out the same day. Like she gets out of work, she like drops off her coat, and then it's on TV. Jake is premiere.
That tweet video also is one of my favorite little small parts in the movie because
Mm.
she's directing Tweet on what to do. So she's in the harness at first. And she's like, Tweet, I just want you to work your arms and do this. And Tweet's like, I got it. And then she proceeds to do none of that, which she told her to do. She just goes straight down on the thing. So that's a small part that I always
And
love.
then and
And
then
back,
Honey
back,
Daniels was
yeah, go
like,
ahead.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
Cut and print. This
And
thing's
then
got to
back to
be on the
that
streets by 7
that
p.m.
that Jadakiss video, man. Like my ears lit up when I heard that beat, and I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, cool! They got some Neptune's beats." And then boom, Dark Child, and I was like, "Oh, so they
No.
just got Dark Child to just do Neptune's beats? That's cool." I mean, even as a kid, I didn't really know what was going on, but I was like, that was still kind of weird to me because I was a big Neptune's fan as a teenager or whatever. But
Mm.
I'll be honest, behind "Can I Live." That's probably my second favorite Jadakiss song. Even though you
Okay.
only hear like two, even though you only hear 2 seconds of it,
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
that his laugh and his little ad libs. So that's when I hear Jadakiss or I think anybody talks about him, that that automatically what pops in my head. Not any of his albums, not We Gonna Make It, which is my third favorite song. It's that song that
Oof.
pops in my head.
We
One
were
of my
we were
favorite
just
Even though
rappers
you
of
listening.
don't,
all
We were
time.
just listening to that. We were just listening to that song. Like honestly, like 5 minutes before we got on, we were listening to that song. But it's interesting
mm,
because like yeah, the Rodney Jerkins thing is fascinating because Rodney Jerkins, my impression as a listener is that I think the first time I noticed who he was Brandy's song "What About Us,"
Mm.
and it was one of those like kind of filmed in sort of like an artificial wind tunnel kind of futuristic thing but still austere in some ways. And I sort of just like, this is kind of ripping off like the much cooler aesthetic of like what Timbaland and the Neptunes had been doing from the music
mm,
video on. And I sort of just like, I sort of clocked it as just like, maybe this is not the thing. And like, I don't think this film does much to validate Rodney Jerkins as anything but a guy who can kind of give you a Neptunes type beat.
yeah,
And this is before
yeah. I
we talked
remember
about
in
type beats as a culture. We were talking about type beats in 2003.
I remember in school. I remember some kids during lunch were listening to Destiny's Child, and I think it was "Say My Name" or one of the ones that he did for them, and they were saying like, "Oh man, who does these beats are kind of dope? Like who does Destiny's Child beats?" And they're all like, "I think it's Timbaland, man." And then in my head, I'm just trying not to explode because I'm wanting to be like, "No, it's not Timbaland. It's Rodney Jerkins fighting Timbaland, bro." Like, but I was just like, to keep quiet or whatever because I don't want to be the nerd like trying to yell at people about they didn't know what producers were
No,
and stuff
right.
like that. But yeah, man. But Rodney Jerkins did have some hit like some stuff that I felt like sounded like what his sound to me his sound was J Lo. If You Have My Love, like that kind of
Yeah.
like
Hmm.
I don't know.
Mm.
I can't really describe what it is, but that to me was what the Rodney Jerkins sound is to me, his original sound. You know what I'm saying? What he could do more of. And I was watching more of his videos after I watched Honey the rewatch for y'all. And If You Have My Love, that J Lo song, it's a weird video. Have you ever seen that? You remember that video?
Yeah, I have. I've seen it
Mhm.
a few times
It's
actually.
got
Yeah.
it's got a guy in the beginning like kind of touching himself to watching J Lo like as he's in like these security monitor like
Yeah.
Yeah.
scenes, and I'm all like, yo, like this is kind of crazy to have like on MTV like on prime time right now. But I guess you got to like be provocative or whatever. But I thought it was a weird choice for that video.
Yeah.
The
So
It's
the
it's
the
early
it,
2000s had some wild video choices.
mm,
They
yeah.
really, I mean, like, oh yeah, we don't have to go through all of them here, but there were a bunch where you're like, word, okay.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, because I mean, you got to think about it like this: like they're the people. The music videos became so prevalent in the '90s, and it became the way in which that people like found out about a lot of this stuff, so that it was just like it's not just a showcase of an artist performing a song live or pantomiming a song. It's like, no, this can actually be an opportunity to do something really creative. Like people like Hype Williams obviously took incredible strides towards that, and I give credit to him for being able to make a great movie as well as doing such innovative, 4-minute segments over the years. And I think it emboldened a lot of the directors in the 2000s that it could be an art form that like you can do something in. I mean, it's money
Mm.
and you can get paid to do commercial work, and that's great. People need to get paid. Like you go into film school and you got to pay your bills. That's great. But like at the same time, there was also freedom to be creative, to do something different, which is
Mm.
why I'm just so disappointed by the ideas in this film for all of these different videos. Like, I don't think Michael Ellis is a particularly visionary director. Like, it's
I,
soundstage, kind of blandish soundstage,
his his
outside,
directing style,
the Genuine video,
good, bad. I'm gonna lean toward bad.
Michael Ellis. Yeah.
Yeah, even though they seem to be kind of blockbusters. People are really into them and they're premiering it.
Well, I
They're
mean,
premiering
minutes
on
later,
network television at like 8 at night.
minutes later. It's
Yeah,
just like,
like 25 minutes after they're shot, and everybody's like,
like,
I
another
this,
triumph.
guess maybe that's why he's getting the work. It's because it's a quick turnaround. It's all about the
yeah,
turnaround. Like,
he's got an editing bay
maybe
in the back of that limo. He's just like, we're on
for
it,
sure.
just
He's
sitting
one
there.
of the first guys to go into digital, probably like just cutting it right down his computer or something.
Respect.
But
I think that's probably true.
yeah,
But
man, yeah. The
it's
more and more I was
wild.
dealing with stuff like that, I understand like it's not always just the talent; it's the people that can deliver the product under budget and quickly.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's not
There.
always the talent because there's talented people that can do the thing, but they're the ones that are so particular and shoot it again. Like I don't know, like that. It
I
makes
didn't
sense to me,
particularly
even
think
though it's
like
probably not the reason. Yeah.
there's a obvious tropey cookie cuttery thing going on here, but
Hmm.
I didn't honestly believe the performances were so awful. I mean, Alba, not strong, but there were some good actors who came in and did some work.
Yeah.
Her
I think,
parents come to mind. They were veteran actors at that point,
oh,
and they
absolutely.
came in and they played the one discerning parent, one supportive parent thing that's always in these movies. Pretty good. I thought they were good.
I wanted to bring up the parents too because I'm all like, that's for sure a leftover sign that this was originally a Beyonce project, right? Like that's why the parents are cast because they look more like Beyonce than I don't know what race Jessica Alba is really supposed to be in the movie, but
Yeah. In reality, she's
definitely the
half
parent.
Mexican. In real
Right.
life,
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
half
right.
Mexican. I guess she's
Yeah,
supposed to be
Filipino too, I
like,
think, something like
yeah, I
that.
forget what the other side, but I know she's half Mexican. And then
Yeah.
in this movie, I guess the idea is she's supposed to be like, I want to say, if I'm just thinking purely from a New York lens, she's meant to be half Puerto Rican and half Dominican. And that's what they're
Okay.
trying to convey in that. And if I'm just thinking purely of Bronx demographics at this point,
Hmm.
Which
is
they
like,
may not have been doing. We
which
don't
they
know.
may not have been. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm giving
But
them
I like
maybe more
this.
credit, maybe
Yeah.
more credit. And yeah, so but the Beyonce thing is definitely worth mentioning, obviously, because
Hmm.
she was
Yeah.
originally going to be the
Honey
she was intention.
Daniels.
This is a vehicle for her. This is a vehicle for her. She ended up doing having to tour for her
Yeah, she was so huge in the music
dangerously
world at that point that she wasn't stopping touring
like
right
she
then.
was she had like
It's the
promotional and
sweetest
tour
plum.
stuff for Dangerously in Love, and so it was like there was no way that she was going to like go recycle. And then
Uh,
in the end, she does Carmen, a hip opera with Robert Townsend, director of The Meteor Man. So like respect for her choice there. She made a film that maybe is better regarded.
mm,
She's also done some horrible movies. Obviously, we watched Obsessed. I don't know if have you ever seen Obsessed, the Beyonce vehicle?
Yeah, I see him says.
Yeah,
No comment on that
it's
one, really.
yeah,
It's
nothing to
forgettable.
say.
I forgot about it, but um,
we did it what, like 2 seasons ago, and
yeah,
it was a hard film to rewatch, I'll say that.
I'm not
But
a fan.
it's not Idris Elba's best work, no, not Beyonce's best work. Um so but like
oh,
I
that's the one
think
with Ali Lauder. Okay, I feel you. I feel
and
you. I
Ali
was thinking of the
Larter,
Yeah,
other one for
yeah,
some
exactly, yeah.
reason. I was thinking about that dude with the eyes from Barbershop. That was the other movie, but some I forgot what the name of that movie was. But I got you now. I know what
Yeah, no, exactly. Again, the fact that it's not particularly memorable speaks volumes. Like,
you're
it's like I
it
don't
is
remember who the
pretty
lead
bad.
was in that film. It's only because we obsessed because we watched it. But like even
yeah.
with like
Obsessed.
Yeah.
We were
There's
obsessed.
there's a couple of weird loose things in this that just didn't make sense. Like there's the dog in this movie who
Oh,
appears
yeah,
in
there's a
like
dog.
two scenes.
I
We have no sense of how this
forgot there
dog
was
is
a
being
dog.
cared. I mean, you've seen it enough times, man. Like, does the dog stick out for you? Because it really stuck out for you. I'm like, who's taking care of this fucking dog?
I'll be honest. I've seen it enough times that I don't remember. I could not remember a dog actually, or what even looks like in the movie. Even though I've seen it so many times. Not
Yeah.
you bringing it up, I would have never remembered that there was even a
I have
dog in this
no
movie.
idea what that dog looks like. None.
It's a pug. It's a pug. It was Jessica Alba's actual
It is. It's
dog.
a pug.
Oh,
It was
okay,
her
cool.
actual dog. But I just was like, what is this doing here? It has no bearing on the plot. And it only appears like they couldn't even bring it to the dance benefit. Does it could have its
Mm.
own chair, a little dog just be in the chair watching the dance benefit?
There wasn't
Probably in the
enough time,
contract.
Gary. The dance benefit was 4 minutes long and
Yo,
$20.
$20 cover. All right. Look, I've overpaid for shows before. I'll admit it. But
We're in an
like
era where show tickets are wild expensive,
right now, for
right?
sure.
For
Yeah.
sure. And I'm still appalled at the 4 minutes for $20 output.
That's like
That's
the Death Grip
terrible.
show where they don't show up. It's like that
Yeah,
sort of
and it
thing.
was
You're
like
like,
during the day.
this dance benefit, $20 at the door,
The
and they
benefit
perform.
was hastily put together, and maybe the community center was hastily added. I didn't know if you knew this, but the community center's in trouble.
Yes, I heard this. I
It's
have more.
it's in trouble. The community center, it's things are going poorly over there.
But this benefit wasn't for this community center that's falling apart. Her mother's community center probably needs the
Right.
money from this more than
She's just gonna
her
buy
dance
another thing
school.
and be like, "You're out, mom.
Like
I don't care
mom's
about your building."
like it's failing building codes. Like if you know anything about the Department of Buildings in this city, like it's gonna be a lot of money and a lot of red tape to get through to get that place back up and running. We never find out what happens to the community center. We have to assume that the center is no more. The focus now shifts to the Honey Daniels founded Bronx Dance Center, and that's just it.
And you
Okay.
didn't even need the damn fundraiser because the banker
No, they
lady
don't.
was
I
like,
mean,
"Yo,
that
I have this
I'll just
connection
fund
that
it, dog. I got you.
my
Like,
rich
This is
art patrons.
why didn't you bring that up before, bro? Like, you could
this
clearly
brings
she
up
wanted a dance studio. Nope. She's like, no, I don't know. I don't know anybody that can help you out. Clearly
I
you
don't
do.
know.
this
Clearly you
brings
do,
up a
bro.
really important point, I think.
Oh no.
The banking in this movie is out of control. This bank's not going to stay open very long if these are the people running it. I'm sorry, but she's just giving money away. They
Like,
never sign any paperwork. She's just like, I need some money. And she's like, I got you. What do you need? Like 6 weeks? It's yours.
yeah.
Splits, comes back and is like, I'm not going to make this 6 week deadline. And she was like,
Mhm.
well, how long do you need?
Like, you have to assume that there's like
That's
a
not at all
client on the other
good.
end of that. There's somebody at the other end of that who's just like waiting for their money, being like, why hasn't the bank been able to flip this thing? What? You're waiting on Honey Daniels?
Who the hell is
Mm.
that?
A
Get me my
22 year
money or
old?
you're
Waiting on
fired.
20, you wait a 22-year-old to come up with fucking like five figures? Really? Is she
This is
rich?
based on a
No.
true story. The
I'm
community center really was in trouble.
I'm baffled. I'm
Mm.
baffled by this. But yeah, the irony at the very end of the
The
film
banking.
is that there's a the banker knows some rich arts patrons who would fund this entire project, thus nullifying the need for a
Based on
dance
4
benefit.
minutes of kids running around in circles.
Like and, and because again, I don't know enough about the dance. Like, was that performance good? Was it a good dance performance, really? I mean, I've seen
If you
breakers, I've
put
seen people
yourself in the
freestyle.
audience and you erase from your mind the $20 fiasco and how it was 4 minutes,
Yeah.
would you be in to donate for that? Would you be down? You'd be like, all right,
I
I like
mean,
what we're seeing here.
if I
Here's
was
a bunch
like
of money.
if I was Benny and Raymond's mom, then sure, yeah, then I feel pretty good about that. But like she seemed really emotional about the whole thing,
Right.
but I don't feel like the energy in that room was justified by this. Also, really packed for that $20 show. And then
During the day.
just
Just a little four
applause
minute
after four
matinee
minutes.
for $20.
And like and the flyer, I mean, I looked at the flyer a little more closely my third viewing, and the flyer says hip hop, freestyle, and I'm like, they don't play any hip hop. The
There's no
dances are not
freestyling.
freestyle. These are
No.
choreographed moves that they've been practicing, rehearsing for weeks. Like,
Well,
what am I watching here?
this movie suffers a little bit from some current hip hop word saladry.
Mm.
They're just kind of throwing some terms out at you. Hip hop,
Mm.
freestyle. Like this is the one, like this is what you want. And it's, it's a 4 minute routine.
I just don't understand how you can start this movie with Ghostface Killer and end it with Yolanda Adams. I
It's
don't
a
know how you.
it's a wild trip, this one.
I was happy for Ghostface for getting that look though,
No,
opening
it's
up the movie.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I remember Mark Ronson being everywhere around in that time.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, I do remember seeing his little sister Samantha Ronson on Rockefeller, and being like, "Yo, that's awesome. It's a changing of the guard." You know what I'm saying? Like to me, that was like, "Yo, you're getting Kanye on there. You got Samantha Ronson." You know what I'm saying? Like it's getting a little bit of melding of the worlds, and I was liking it. Nothing really came from the Samantha Ronson thing, I don't think, but I remember distinctly seeing the poster with the whole crew of Rockefeller, who was on Rockefeller, Cameron, Benny Siegel, and then in a little corner, I saw Samantha Ronson. I was like, "That's Dame Dash, the vision right there. He knows what he's doing." Incorporating more worlds. I don't know what New York was like around that time. Like I spent a little bit of time in New York in the early '90s when I was a kid. My dad lived up there, and then I came back around the late 2000s, 2010s, early 2010s.
Yeah.
But like to me, on the outsider, I felt like that whole scene in New York, it was kind of like you had New York and kind of gangster rap, but it was kind of melding with like this more other outside of it. They're taking outside influences and like really melding it, molding it, or what is it, melding everything together or whatever. But yeah, I just wanted to say that right there because I remember the Mark Ronson thing in the beginning and just being like, yo, they're kind of going different ways in New York. They don't really know that, they're trying to define their sound and maybe they can find it with like other producers outside of that typical New York sound. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah,
Especially
because
with
I
the
can.
Neptunes. You know what I'm saying? Especially with the
Yeah.
Neptunes really providing a lot of New York rappers with hits. I don't know, mostly Jay Z, but at the same time, I feel like the Neptunes and Timbaland really brought back New York. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as like giving credit to New York producers, it was definitely producers more from the South and like and other places
Mm.
that were giving New Yorkers those hits. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I
No,
just
but
wanted to
but
touch
but
on
it's
that for
but it's a
sure.
good point because like when you get to 2003, you've already had so much of this experience. Like you've gotten past like the blueprint at this point, and it's like
Mm.
the
Mm,
kind of production where it's like, okay, now Rockefeller had sort of found a sound that they could make for New York, and that was sort of the like Just Blaze, Kanye
mm,
West, Bink, like those sorts of things. You had that around that point. Like even Scarface is doing stuff with those beats. Like like that's incredible. Like
mm,
we're getting this merge, but like someone like Jay-Z was absolutely like on the forefront of bringing these like definitively or decidedly not New York sounds in, so that you can open a movie like this in 2003 with Ghostface and it's a Mark Ronson beat and it
mm,
doesn't
Mm.
feel off. And then you can
mm,
have Jadakiss and Chic with a Rodney Jerkins beat and be like, okay, that doesn't
mm,
feel off. And then like, yeah, I mean, there's other things on the soundtrack. You've got like Eric Sermon, you've got Redman. Like, it's not as if like we've gone completely out of the tri-state, but the
With
reality is that hip hop was not as uniform at that point. It was
mm,
true.
definitely taking in more, and it would only
This
increase,
this
obviously, as you
record
know.
this record during a it didn't do great. If I remember correctly, I read this where it was like it debuted at like 155.
It was like 105, 105.
105.
So it
Okay.
didn't crack the top 100 in terms of the
It
album
didn't.
release. No.
And I feel like that many names, usually when we've
Oh,
covered other movies, did really well.
you talking
This
about
one
Yeah.
didn't
Ooey?
really do much.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
No,
Which
I
is
mean,
that's
Uwe
surprising as
itself,
hell
it's the
because
soundtrack. We're talking about the soundtrack specifically. I mean, like, so
Yeah.
Uwe's on this, but like, no,
oh,
that
okay, okay, okay,
Uwe itself had its own life and it had its own performance. But the
okay,
soundtrack itself,
yeah,
a weird phenomenon we've noticed with some of these, like, we're talking about these movies with like rappers in either in front of the camera, or behind the camera, and what we find a
mm.
lot is that even if the film didn't do particularly well, the soundtracks tend to do well. We
Oh,
did
for
Gang
Yeah.
sure, for
Related
sure.
this season, and it's like all this
Mm,
posthumous Tupac stuff and like Death Row trying to find its
Yeah.
footing after Suge Knight. Like it's sort of figuring itself out. So Outlaws stuff and all these things are on there. So like, but those soundtracks are doing incredibly well. And
Yeah.
then you get something
for
like this,
sure.
we're like, okay, well, like there are names on here, they're recognizable, but just like some of those
It
individual
just
songs
didn't
are
do
getting
anything.
might do, but like the actual soundtracks aren't doing it. It's not hitting the same way. Plus, again, the other key difference is like this is now Napster era. Like you've now had
Mm,
quite a few years of
Mm.
Napster doing its thing. Sales of a record is like a whole other different conversation now.
For the
So I
first
think
time, you could hear a song and then go get it immediately for free.
you didn't need to buy Uwe. You didn't need to buy
Yeah.
it. You
You
could
could
you
I had
just
could
that
have
just
it.
LimeWire running 24/7.
exactly
I had that
just that
LimeWire.
you got that Ethernet connection. You're just like, I gotta make it
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
I gotta make it work.
Mhm.
All
100%.
right. Before we let you go, I want to just take a step back on this film because there were sequels made to this film by this director. And while I have not ventured into the sequels yet, it sounds like he sort of just took the idea of this and kind of recycles it a bit, meaning like these sequels exist in a world where Honey Daniels existed in some
Mhm.
capacity,
Mhm.
and these are all kind of the legacy of it. But like there's like incredible cast things on this stuff too. Have you seen any of these sequels?
I've not. I've seen the cases like at the store, but I've never actually popped one in. No. And I never catch it on TV either, so I never had a chance to watch them. No.
As
I feel
someone who has seen like a number of these series dance film,
Mhm.
like I've seen a ton of like all of the step ups, all of those, all of the
Yes.
it's a lot. And no, I didn't follow the story of Honey Daniels any further than her hanging out with Missy.
But it's
That's
not, but the
where
thing
that's
is,
where it ended for me.
it's also like it's not
And
Honey
I know
Daniel's
it's none of the
story.
people from the original film, right? Yeah.
No,
It's a
but
whole different
also,
thing.
but like the people who starred in these films are like Cassie and Teyana Taylor. Like
Yeah.
real people ended up
Mhm.
starring in these films. So like they didn't like lose the star power per se. Like they put some real
I
people
mean,
into it. And
listen, I said it earlier, young star saving the community center is well-worn territory. You
yeah,
can do it over and over again and people will watch.
I definitely think it was a good. I think they kept it going because even though I don't know how much it made in the box office or if it's considered a success, but it
Didn't do
rings
it.
bells. Like I was gonna say, like people my age, and the reason why I watched it so many times is that the girls love this movie. Like they just like I don't know. Like even my fiance now, like this is her favorite childhood movie growing up. Like that's the reason why I've even watched it past 10 times. We throw it on like once a year, like just for laughs. Like this movie and people that I talk about it, like man, Honey is hilarious. It's so bad, it's hilarious. It's also a cool way behind the scenes look. The people that are in it, I don't know, man. Like I can see why they made more, and people like got Cassie and Tiana Taylor to be in it because I'm sure they saw Honey as like in their eyes was a huge success. You know what I'm saying?
This was
So
part
yeah.
of the push where Alba became the like sort of beauty queen of the universe for a minute
Well, it's
there,
the
right?
transition
for
between
sure.
Dark Angel, which had just
Yeah.
ended, into this.
Yeah.
But the point you're making here about the sort of the popularity of this film is well made because like the Rotten Tomatoes score for this is horrible. It's like
21.
21%.
Yeah.
But the audience
Mm.
score for this is 71%.
Yeah, people really like this
People
movie.
found this movie and loved it. It
Yeah,
also
yeah.
wasn't a box office bomb either. It wasn't an incredible success, but it's like an $18 million budget and a $30 million box office.
Well, it's
And
a
you
win.
have to assume that over the past 20 years, given the conversation we've just been having, the life of this film, they made multiple sequels, it has had a life and a meaning beyond it. The same way that like the same director directed like some of the sequels to like Bring It On and Drumline. Like there is a
Oh yeah.
genre of film here
Oh
where
yeah.
there's a natural audience for it.
I've seen all those.
In the same way, like I will watch any stoner comedy and I will watch almost any
Yeah.
dumb big action movie just because clearly there's an audience for this type of thing. So who's going to be able to say that this is not a good movie per se or not worth people's time when clearly there is an audience for exactly
Oh, this
this
is
kind
a
of
good
fare?
bad movie for sure.
It's
I'm
a
all
good bad
in.
movie,
It's a good bad movie.
no question.
I'm into it.
For sure. The more movies
The-
I've watched throughout the years, the older I've got, I've come to appreciate that as long as they put it together, as it's cut well, it's not too long, it's got lighting, it's got somewhat decent acting. Like that's hard enough in itself. And there are movies that don't even have that to get a release. I've seen Blood and Blood Out, the sequel,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that
oh
is a
man, the
terrible. That
sequel.
now that is a terrible, terrible movie. Like that, there's no lighting, no. Didn't seem like
Mm.
there was a script. Like you know what I'm saying? Like so at least this movie had all the components to be a movie. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh
I got to
God,
give it up for that. But
yeah.
yeah, it could be
It,
so much worse. And people are quick to call a movie bad, and they're bad. But man, it could be so much worse. You know what I'm saying?
it is a sliding scale. There absolutely
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
There's a spectrum that exists of bad movie, and this is in a very good place on that spectrum.
for sure,
Absolutely, for
for
sure.
sure.
Hey, Jeff, I
Yes,
uh
Gary.
I couldn't help but notice at one point during this conversation you whispered a word, and that word is basketball.
It's my favorite
Basketball.
sport. I love it when they dribble up and down the court, Gary.
So we somehow watched another basketball movie this
In a
season.
way, yeah,
It's
this had a
not like,
basketball overtone to it. There were people
yeah,
playing basketball a lot in the background.
which is a community center trope too.
This ties in with my theory, which really isn't a theory. It's been proven a billion times over that you can't really watch or listen to or be around hip hop without hearing about basketball or seeing it in some way, especially in the 90s and the
Yeah,
2000s.
I definitely recognize there is a kind of an inextricability in terms of the two cultures.
So
They are.
this isn't a planned attack. I'm not making this the basketball season in secret.
I just feel sort of
You feel
like
like I am.
there's some coincidences that have been happening. Like, and I'm not formally accusing you or anything. I want to be clear about that. I'm just saying
No, you're not taking this to court.
I no, I just find it a little odd that we just keep
That
this just keeps
something I like
becoming.
would get in here somehow. We're supposed to be torturing me.
I don't recall there being any basketball in Ghosts of Mars, for example. Yet, like the further we
You
go
know,
down
and
this
it tears me
path,
up inside.
the further we go
That's
down
what's
this
wrong with
path,
that movie is that there's no basketball on Mars.
there's damn well other reasons why that movie is,
Yeah.
but I just find that it's coming into play. And I'm just saying, let's just be mindful going forward to try to
Hmm.
like avoid this because as you know, I'm not a basketball fan. I
Fair,
appreciate
fair.
it.
We didn't
I've
have to
seen
talk
like
much about it in this one.
no, we didn't, which is great. We didn't really talk too much about it. Like, and look, as somebody who grew up in community centers, I
Hmm.
mean, I know
I played a
basketball
lot of
was.
basketball in community
I
centers.
played a lot of basketball in
A
community centers. I
lot.
wasn't good. I wasn't good, but I
I was
played
all
it.
right.
You're a different story. You're like, a tall
Now, when
guy,
I was a
and
kid, dude, I was like
your dad's a
tiny,
and your dad's a coach.
but he
So
was a
like,
coach. So
so
yeah,
like it's different. My
the
father didn't care.
fundamentals game was it was on
My
lock.
father cared about like one sport, and it was boxing, and he didn't care about that much, but he cared about that one sport, and he wasn't out there saying, "Hey, how about you get in the ring, pretty boy?" So like we
Mm.
were we were good. So all I'm saying is let's just be mindful for the rest of the season to try to avoid some of these sort of basketball themed movies.
Can't promise you I'll try, but I'll try to try.
It's the Cabbages Podcast Network.